that we have to kind of go over with you and get you to adopt at some point in time. So that's my overview. Kelly, do you want to talk to them about the agenda, if everybody has it in front of them, or how we go from there?
Yeah, so first I have to apologize for not publishing the agenda at least 24 hours in advance. I thought I had not. So I published it today just before the meeting, and hopefully you got a notification by email that the agenda had been published. It'll also show on that same email some links for any materials that we'll be looking at during the meeting. So you'll have all that available to you.
Okay.
It'll also have the link for the Teams meeting, which was not on the first publication. So I was doing really well today with this meeting, sir. So the first item on our agenda today was the commissioner introduction. So just introducing yourselves and what do you feel comfortable sharing? How long you've been here? And what brought you to the Ethics Commission?
Who are you directing that to?
Oh, I was just throwing it out there to see who would bite.
Oh. Okay, I'll start. I'm the one that was on the beginning, the original Ethics Commission when it was created. I went back and looked, and I think the first piece of paper that has the date on it that when we started was 2012. October 2nd, 2012. So that must have been when it sort of started. And as I've mentioned to Kelly a couple times on the phone, we really were not terribly active. You know, we went through a couple of meetings, but nothing ever really came up to give us a sense of business to take care of. And we had a little trouble keeping members. There was only 3 of us, but one of them we just never could get. It seemed like it was always just 2 of us, and that person moved away a few years ago, so that's why he was not available to continue. And at any rate, I moved to La Plata in 1981. It was a career move for me. I came up here to join a local bank up here called Bank of Southern Maryland. If you haven't been here in a while, it disappeared a few years ago. Matter of fact, probably about 15. It was purchased by PNC Bank, and I've been retired now for quite some time. So I live in Clark's Run, and that's I guess that's about the extent of it.
Okay. And how did you come to the Ethics Commission?
I'm sorry.
How did you come to the Ethics Commission? Were you recruited or?
And I did not volunteer. My Roy Hale is a neighbor of mine, and of course he's been active with the town of La Plata, in various offices. Seems like forever. And of course he was he was a councilman, and then he was a vice mayor, and then he became mayor a few years back. So. He always wanted me to get kind of involved. I was extremely involved in civic activities when I first came here back in the 80s and 90s. So as I told him, I kind of feel like I paid my dues here, since my wife informed me how much time I was gone. But at any rate, and so finally I told him I would, something that would work for me. And so when he told me about this, he says, they've never met, but we need to have one. Talking about an ethics commission. And he says, you would be real good at it. At least he felt that way. So when I heard that it was just an on-call kind of operation, I was kind of used to service clubs and things of that nature that required monthly meetings, sometimes bi-monthly meetings, sometimes 3 times a month. So this one appealed to me, and so I told him, let me give this one a shot. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah, you look like you were ready.
Yes, I can go next. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tarina Ali. I have been newly appointed here to the Ethics Commission. I have been a lifelong resident of the District of Columbia for my whole life, but I'm new to La Plata just the past 90 days. And so I've been involved in many things far as service-wise. I'm an officer of the court for DC Superior Court. So I'm familiar with ethical things and working in some legal law capacities for my employment by profession. I'm a counselor also too. And so just wanting to get my hands involved with service because that's some of my core ethics and mantra, and this opportunity presented itself. And so I said, sounds like something interesting I can do, and I can learn also. Because ethics, yet again, are something as far as my guiding principles. And so, yeah, just here in the plate, I'm loving being here. Definitely different from the city of DC, but I like the slower pace at this point for me, and looking forward to bringing my skill set to here, the Ethics Commission.
Awesome. Chandra?
Yeah, my name is Sean Romoli. I've lived in Bel Air, Maryland since 1980. Worked for the federal government as a chief pharmacist for the Department of Health and Human Services until 2003. Then I worked for the State Board of Pharmacy, Maryland State Board of Pharmacy, as a compliance officer, and then worked as a deputy drug controller and the drug controller for the state of Maryland, and retired in 2015. And then in 2019, we moved from Bel Air to La Plata to be with our son and our newly born grandson. And since I've been here, I've been active with our homeowners association. And when I saw this article in the paper, or someone probably sent me, I don't remember, but I said, okay, you know, I like La Plata, I like living here, and I wanted to contribute what little experience I have, you know, to the La Plata Township.
Awesome. It was in town notes, I'm betting, is where you saw it. And Kimberly has joined us online.
Yes, hello. My name is Kimberly Banks. I've been living in La Plata for about 4.5 years. I wanted to be a part of the community more since I'm new here, and I saw an article in the paper years ago, so that's why I joined.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to know, sir?
I do work for the federal government. I work for the Department of Labor. I've been with them for 5.5 years, but I've been in the federal government for 17 years.
Okay, awesome. Mr. Gullo?
Great. Well, I told you I'm the town attorney, and I've been the town attorney for over a year for La Plata. But I have a 30-year law practice where I represent cities and towns across the state of Maryland. So La Plata is one of my clients, and I have them far flung from Rising Sun in Cecil County to Poolesville in Montgomery County to Taneytown and Carroll County, and all in between. I used to be the mayor of a town for 8 years. That's how I got into municipal government when I was 23. And so I have dealt with both sides of the bench, trying to deal with the legal sides, the political sides. And I'm looking forward to working with you. I have a bunch of experience that I can bring to the table, and hopefully we'll all be able to deal with things when they arise, because I guess that leads us to our next roles and duties. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, so this may be a repeat, but I thought if we start at the same page, I'd give you at least my perspective of what an ethics commission does, at least in the municipal world. So your roles and duties are covered in the town code. There's a section on ethics, and if you haven't been provided to that, we can get you the copy of that. But that basically talks about your authority and roles and duties. And as was said earlier, your role is one of an intermittent one. You really don't meet all the time. You don't really take a lot of action on your own. You are a board that is consulted when there's an ethical dilemma. And typically it has to be in the form of either a complaint from a citizen, doesn't have to be a citizen, but from a third party, or an inquiry from one of our elected officials, staff members, community members, where they need some guidance to see, is their intended conduct going to violate any of the town's ethics rules? So that's one of your big jobs. It's almost like a job of a quasi judiciary board, where you're going to determine things based on facts and presentations. But to be honest, that doesn't happen all that often. When it happens, it's a big deal, but it doesn't really happen all that often. So if you can think of that as one of your roles, as providing ethical advice and ethical opinions for the town, and it's based on the town's statute, you wonder, well, how did the town statute come about? The town statute was adopted by the mayor and council of the town, and they were directed by the state of Maryland that they must adopt an ethics ordinance. And it had to have certain provisions in it, certain minimum standards in it, so that across the state of Maryland, there'd be uniformity. So what your town has is the same as what Indian Head has, and so on and so forth. And the town council adopts the ethics ordinance with its provisions, but it is reviewed by the state ethics commission. So individuals like you sitting on an ethics commission that covers the state, and those would be covering state employees and state elected officials. But you can see the kind of paradigm that's the statewide one, you're the local one. And so the state ethics board looks at the town's ethics ordinance when it's adopted and says, yes, it meets muster, or no, it does not. And in the situations you have in front of us, everything that is going to be presented, that has been approved by the state. So anytime we make a change, it needs to be approved by the state. When I say we make a change, it's important to realize that the town council is the ones that makes the changes to the ordinance. So in the documents you read, they're the ones by ordinance that change those words. Your group has exclusive jurisdiction in implementing that ordinance. So anything that deals with the ordinance is only you and no one else. And so, for example, one of the things we're going to talk about today are financial disclosure forms. One of the provisions of the ethics ordinance is that elected officials and those running for elected office in the town of La Plata have to fill out financial disclosure forms. And those forms are created by your group, reviewed by your group, and maintained by your group. So you have to do it, and how you do it is based on what your group decides. There is also another set of forms. It's a little less. It's gift disclosure forms. And so not only does the elected officials and people running for elected office in La Plata have to fill that out, but key staff members and members of the commissions, the board and commissions for La Plata, they often have to fill out this gift disclosure form. And those forms get reviewed by your group. So you can see that it's one of tabletop exercises usually. And why I say usually is that's going to happen once a year regardless. So you can kind of figure that you'll be meeting about this time every year, maybe in February about this time, because the forms get distributed at the end of the calendar year. The people have a month to fill them in. They come back in, and then you all get together and review them. So once a year in February is when you're going to deal with it. Every other year, prior to the election, and your elections are in May, so it's going to be prior to May, so figure around March or April every other year, you will need to review the same type of form, except it'll be filed by those running for office. And you are not eligible to run for office if you have not completed that form. So you can imagine it's a timely issue for our board to get. People have to file and say they're going to run. Then we have to review the form and still give them enough time to campaign and do their thing. So that is an every other year event for us. And then, as I mentioned, we're on call as needed for ethics advice. So that kind of covers the general responsibilities and roles. As far as your group, you each are entitled to a vote. You each deliberate through every process. You typically do things by motion, just like you see in the service clubs and things like that, a motion and a second and a vote. And your organization is going to be run by a chairman. And simply the chairman is the one that's going to interact with the town staff. So if we need to run something by them, if there is somebody to chair the meeting, if there's somebody to sign an opinion, it's the chairman that we're going to seek out. And if the chairman needs more advice, then the chairman will call a meeting, and then the rest of the board can get together. All your meetings are open meetings, meaning they're subject to the Maryland Open Meetings Act, which means the public can watch. That does not give the public a right to participate. So they can watch like they can do right now, streaming live. They could come into the chamber in front of you and sit there and watch. Unlike the town council, you do not necessarily have a public input part of your meeting, because what you do isn't really creating policy, it's administering policy. So the public can watch what's going on, but not necessarily have input. If there is a need for public input, you as a group decide whether the public can speak or not at that point in time. You also have the opportunity to have a closed session, meaning that the public is excluded from, that is not on the internet, not reviewed. And typically there's exceptions for that in the state law. And the typical one that we use is either for personnel reasons, to protect the privacy of an individual and a matter we're dealing with, or if it's for legal advice. Obviously, I'm your attorney, and I'm not going to give you legal advice that the public gets to hear. You get to be advised just like an individual would get to be advised. So that covers the meetings. At the end of every meeting, after the meeting is concluded, the staff member assigned to us, and that's Ms. Kelly at this point in time, will be producing minutes of the actions that you've taken at the meeting, and then you will review those, and you're familiar with how minutes work in service organizations and whatnot. So that creates the official record of what your board does. And I believe that's what I have, unless you have any questions for me, or Kelly, if you have any things that I've missed.
I do have a question. Since this is, I would say, use the word, I guess, ad hoc or as needed, it said things have not come up as often. But it brings to my mind sometimes that we've seen it on the news where someone had an ethical issue in a state or a town or what have you, and everyone has to meet. I guess my question would be, even though there isn't those things, I'm just an advocate for ongoing training, maybe quarterly or things of that nature, or can cases be coming that we can review that something happened in another town, just to stay sharp on what the codes are and things of that nature, opposed to when something comes and you may have not read it or practiced it in a while.
Yes, certainly. I mean, it's up to you all how involved you want to be, meaning your group as a group. Typically, some towns of mine, some of them have met quarterly in the past, where they said every 3 months, we're just going to get together and talk about we usually try to find an agenda for them, whether it's we come in with a speaker for training, telling them about the latest ethics laws, or we talk about revisions. One of my towns has a situation where the financial disclosure forms, and you'll see this, they come back and they're errors. It's like grading a test. They come back filled out, and everybody always messes up question 7, let's say. And so then you're saying, well, we're going to meet and look at question 7, because obviously we're not getting across what we want to get across. So you're meeting an open session to do that. And certainly that can be something that is easy to do. It's easiest for the town staff, because we have to staff these meetings for you. If you want to do that, you do it like on a consistent day. So if it's like the 3rd Monday of every month, and of course you have other things going on in the building that has to be worked in, but every 3 months on the 3rd Monday, the Ethics Commission meets, and maybe you have an agenda item, maybe you don't. There is also, and I kind of glossed over this, that it's not solely complaint driven. If the Ethics Commission is aware or is concerned about something, a member can bring it to the rest of the commission, and on your own action, you can cause, I'll call it an investigation, but it's not quite like that, but you can cause the issue to come to light. And so possibly every 3 months, this would give you an opportunity, or every 6 months, to come together and say, well, we heard about this. How does this apply? Should we do something? So if the board wants to do something like that, we certainly can make it happen.
Thank you.
I have two unrelated questions. One of them is administrative. You mentioned March every other year, but we only have elections every 4 years.
Right. Yeah, I knew, and I so it came out of my mouth.
Okay.
It would be, eventually we're going to get a calendar together is where this will go.
Yeah.
So we've had the elections were already occurred. So we're looking, it'll be right before the election, and you
Okay.
have elections every 4 years. And yes, I say March, but typically we have to look at the election cycle. It has to be close enough that all the candidates have filed to run so that you know who they are, but far enough away from election day that you can still certify that the candidates have done what they needed to do. And that usually falls within like a 2-week period of that time frame.
Okay. So we'll figure that out. Excellent. And the other one, and this is kind of obscure. You were talking about public input and how we don't really have a place for that in Ethics Commission proceedings. Is there a way for the public to provide input, like written or email, or is that even part of the process?
Well, you can, and you have to be careful with this. Everybody likes to have the ability to have the public input, but you have to remember, what is the input about? If the public isn't happy with the way the ethics code is written or what the code covers, that input would properly be brought to the town council. So having input at your level really isn't helpful at all. They'd have to go somewhere else, and you'd eventually tell them that. If the public has a concern, so it's not an input matter, it's more of I have a complaint, they're not required to come at all. They can do that in writing, but the complaints must be in writing. So there's that way. Typically what I would think would be public input, and this is pretty obscure, would be, let's say you're considering changing the forms in a really, I don't know, a really wide sweeping way that would require people to put a lot of information on the forms that people probably wouldn't want to do. Well, then you might want to have a meeting or a hearing or an opening to the public for that issues to invite people in to say, what do you think? Because the forms, and as you see them and as you get to use them, they are general enough not to be too invasive. But when they were first required by the state, they were pretty invasive. People didn't want to list all their investments. People didn't want to list their retirement and how much it was worth. They felt that was an intrusion to their public service. And so the final forms were a balance. So to your question, there may be opportunities where you want the public to come in and you invite them for specific purposes.
But we would check with you as our advisor as to whether we wanted to open that up.
I would think so. And certainly I'm not trying to squelch if a member of the public was sitting in the audience and says, I want to talk about this. I'm sure you can let them do that. But you also get the frustration when they say, at the end, when you say, well, I really appreciate this, but you really have to take it to some other department. They kind of think that they told you, you should do something, and that's not really your role.
Okay, that's fair. Did anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, another question. How advantageous would it be, or has it been done, where the public knows about this particular commission or committee, even though it's been here for a while? Is there anything that's maybe yearly, there's some literature or information just to revisit with the public, like this is the commission, this is what we do? I'm just curious if any of that has happened, or does it happen, or?
Some of my other towns put like a little blurb in the newsletter I'd like to say it's more often, but it's probably every year. And usually it's a positive piece that says we have an ethics law and all the ethics forms have been filed properly from your elected officials if you want to view them. And again, these towns have them online, so you could go online. Not all the towns do that. I don't think we do that currently. So those are things that you could do to create a more of awareness of that. The concern your board always has is that while you want to take ethics very seriously and you want to keep everything very transparent and open, your board typically is the first place people go to do vendettas against other people. I have a case over in another Southern Maryland town where the two council people can't get along, so they file ethics charges against each other. And then the ethics board is like the parent coming on the back porch saying, I have to make you guys get along. That's not, that's a little beyond what you were expecting and what the public expects. But that's certainly something can be done.
Yeah, and that's written into the code actually, is publicizing the workings of the Ethics Commission and what the purpose is. So after we've reviewed the financial disclosure forms and that process is complete, then that would be a really good time to put that announcement out.
Yes, and again, I'm making it sound so positive. As you get to know me, I like to try to be very candid with you. The reasons other towns do this is because there are people who will not file their ethics disclosure forms. They like the kid that doesn't turn in their homework. And so the way that they can motivate them to do this instead of nasty letters is they say, if we don't get them by February, this article is going to go in the newsletter and we're going to name the people who haven't done it. And that motivates everybody to comply. So,
Shaming.
yes. There's also training opportunities, and I don't know the details of them. I'm an instructor for the University of Maryland Academies for Excellence for Local Governments, and I teach different classes to local government officials. I don't teach this class, but there is a class on ethics that is provided. And so there's the possibility that we could have an in-house training where we do an ethics class sponsored by you all, so you're running it, but inviting all the people that have to comply. That's something that I don't know if we've ever done before. My other towns have done it with mixed participation because people are all about it until it interferes with soccer practice and dinner and things like that. But for you all, you get to work with me and we take as long as you want to do it to figure things out. But for the people that have to fill out the forms, they're given the forms with very little guidance. And so it's almost like if you had a yearly summit one evening where everybody who has to fill out the forms is invited to come. I don't know if you can make it super mandatory, but encouraged to come, and you go over how to fill out the forms, and these are the things we've seen, and you kind of almost have a presentation where it's not for you, it's almost given by you to the other people about what you expect to see.
Sounds great. What was the name of that academy again? I'm sorry.
Academy for Excellence in Local Government.
Thank you.
And it's run by, and you can get the information, our contact would be through the Maryland Municipal League.
And Legit doesn't do anything with that, do they? Do they have an
Yeah.
ethics?
They're one of the partners, Legit and Mako and MML. They make up the academy.
Oh, yeah, but Legit doesn't do an ethics training session. They don't have something like that.
I don't think they do. I think it's just done through the academy, and we can find out who the instructor is and have them come.
Okay. So any other questions? So it's your time. So so next on the agenda is review the financial disclosure forms. Is that a natural move from where we were?
That sounds good. I don't want to monopolize but as soon as you have a chair, I am not going to talk anymore and we'll let the chair do it. But I noticed we did that at the end. So the financial disclosure forms, I'm hoping that's what you all have in front of you to look at. What you have, the genesis of what you have should be familiar to your returning member. These are the forms that were created to implement what the law required. So obviously the statute required certain information. How you get that information from somebody who files is by having these forms. They're tried to make as very straightforward to make sure the answer is there. And they were eventually adopted by your group. As I said earlier, your group has the final say on what these forms say. They don't go to the state. They don't go to the council. Your group is the final word on that. So They were fine and dandy for the years that you've had them. And then the state changed the requirements of the ethics law. They add something every few years. The town council puts it into the town ethics law, and that then requires you all to change the forms to capture this new piece of information that they want. So what you should have in front of you is what the form is, what we're proposing the form should be. It's been vetted by the staff and myself, and parts have been added to it from what it was. If you never saw it before, it doesn't really make a difference. But the parts that have been added capture how the new changes of the ethics law are enacted. I believe there was a document, at least it's something that was a link where it shows the changes. Kelly, is that correct that they have that?
That was attached as those first two pages.
And so you can see that the state ethics commission, like yours, issues what that needs to happen, gives you guidance and says this is what should be done. And that's what you have, shows the changes.
So on the first page, I found a mistake that I didn't think about it when I was copying and pasting. Instruction number 3 has the make the required oath or affirmation before a notary public or other officer authorized, but we removed that from the signature block. So I think it's just make the required oath or affirmation, period.
Yes, we got rid of the notary requirement because it's onerous. These people are swearing under the penalties of perjury anyway. They don't have to be notarized. We know who they are, which is the purpose of the notary anyway. And so people have enough trouble filling out the forms without a notary. Getting them to take it to a notary creates another barrier.
Question, is the forms, is it handwritten or is it digital, these, or the both, these disclosures?
There'll be a printable one, but then
printable.
also an electronic.
Electronic one, okay.
Yeah. But before we went putting all the fields in, we'll make sure that the form is good. Have there been any areas that have caused problems regularly in the past, or any like pitfalls as you're reviewing?
For my other towns, they're all similar. I mean, they're not identical, obviously, but they're all similar. For example, if your Schedule H might be somebody else's Schedule A. So what they usually see, and we'll see this in a month or so when we review how our town does it, is that people forget to include their spouse on the employment section, and that needs to be done. They forget to include property they own, unbelievably. I mean, they just, I'd like to think everybody looks forward to filling this form out, but I would imagine that they don't, kind of like their tax forms. So they rush through it and they forget filling out the obvious things. And the problem that your board has is like, you don't investigate the answers. So you don't get Joe Smith's form and then see his schedule and see where he lives and then look up to see if that's where he really lives. You're looking for completeness. So if obviously he lives in town, if he's an elected official, if he didn't fill out he has a house in town, we know that's incomplete and go back. So I can't say there's one specific area that people forget. The thing that we're lucky in is at a small town, if you actually count the number of forms you're going to be looking at, it's the elected officials. So you're going to be looking at 5 of those and you kind of know who they are. So you're not looking at 500. You'll be able to do a pretty thorough job of doing that.
And then when something was missed, how did that come up? Did somebody just realize? Because I know that guy and I know that his wife works for the town.
Yep.
Was it that kind of thing?
It's exactly like that's exactly it. They said, hey, one of my council people, they didn't declare that they own a house in town. And we know he lives in town. And so they were asked to follow up. So staff contacted the council person. This is in another town. And they said, you didn't list Schedule A. Did you miss it? And he actually, this one case I'm telling you about, he called back and he said, no, I didn't miss it. I don't have a house in my name at all. I live in my wife's house. It's in her name. I have no interest in it, and so therefore it wouldn't be. And so the Ethics Commission made note of that and said, okay, that's the way it is. But it's usually because you know. And that's the whole pitfall of these forms, is that this is almost an after the fact thing. If somebody doesn't tell you, you usually find out later, and then you say, well, you didn't tell us on the ethics form, that's a violation. That's unfortunately how the operation works with this.
Okay, now as far as the commission adopting these forms, is it a formal vote? Is it consensus?
We don't need a formal vote if everybody is in favor. We would use that as consensus, and that's typically the shorthand that the staff and I use, is that unless there's concern, we say that the commission as a majority is in favor of a form. So that's probably the best way to go, since we don't have a chairman to conduct the actual vote and things like that.
So then I need to ask the commissioners, do we have a consensus to adopt these forms?
Yes.
I do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great.
Well, that was easy.
That
Next.
is.
So then the next one I think will also be pretty easy, although I will lay out there so it's in the public. Wesley, I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this, but I understood that you were willing to serve as an alternate,
Yeah, I'll be happy to serve.
to switch from a full member to an alternate.
Yep.
And Karina, you're still interested in serving as a full member?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we still 3 full members and 1 alternate.
Okay.
Do we need to have the town council address that as well?
No, I think that you don't have to have them vote on it, but it should be noted in the minutes that that's what's decided, not only ours, but in the town council's minutes.
Okay.
And the way that we should be doing this, just so we're clear, is as an alternate member. The alternate member should come to every meeting, because we don't know who might not show up that day.
Right.
And if it's a case that takes time, so imagine like a court case, think about like a jury. We want you there the entire time in case it takes several months to deal with this. And then we find out that somebody who's a regular member can't attend when the decision is made. The alternate member is already up to speed. So for all practical purposes, they're 4 members, and we'll worry about how the votes count if there's an absence.
Okay. So then we're to election of the commission chair.
That's correct. So among your group, if you would like to pick a chair, you can volunteer, you can be volunteered, but this is like a filibuster. We can't leave until we have one.
I'm an alternate, so I'm out. And I assume the alternate can be excused sometimes as well for failure to attend. If a regular guy can do it, I can do it.
That's the idea. I mean, I didn't want to put a lot of burden on it, but what we really worry about is not having a quorum enough to meet. And so we need 2 people to meet, and we know everybody's schedule. So everybody gets to play on the team, I guess, is the idea.
I can volunteer to chair it. I'm interested.
Excellent.
I'll second that.
I second it.
Sounds good.
And all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved.
Well, congratulations, Madam Chairperson. So the only other matter that you have, because I know our agenda says matters of information, the only major item that you have to determine, and I don't know whether it's helpful to do it while you're here or not, but now these forms have been approved, the staff is going to send them out. And so it's the middle of January. They're going to have some time for these people to fill them out. Figure that's the middle of February. You're going to need to meet again. And so whether you want to set a meeting date now or set a meeting date via email, it's really up to you all. Anything you can do to reduce the task on Kelly of calling everybody and emailing everybody and coordinating. So Kelly, this is your opportunity to say, how would you like another meeting set up?
Thank you. And what is a day that works for everyone? And also, it doesn't have to be during the business day. It can be during evenings, or we have commission meetings pretty regularly in the evenings.
Evenings work for me, daytime because I'm at work, but evenings work best for me.
Evenings are better for me as well.
Okay. Gentlemen?
You know, my preference would be, if it's going to be after work, be shortly after work. In other words, not 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You know, so if we could do something like today, 4:30, 5 o'clock, something in that range sounds good to me.
Is that workable for you, Darina and Kimberly?
Yeah.
My schedule is flexible. I like the way you schedule this meeting
Mhm.
ahead of time so that, I can try to fit that in, with my appointments,
No,
healthcare appointments and other things.
Sure. Those need to be during the day, definitely.
Yeah, as long as I have advance notice, I can pretty much schedule it
Okay.
to come here.
And Kimberly?
That's fine with me. Yes.
That's fine?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just holding on to third Mondays. Is that what today is? Is it a third Monday?
It is. And that's actually a holiday as well.
Yeah, that just happened.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to the holiday schedule.
It's no worry.
Stay away from Fridays and
It worked
Mondays.
out perfect.
May not be in town, but, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, something like that.
Okay.
I mean, if everybody wants to go with Monday, I'll do it, but I may not be here. You may
Well,
miss it.
Alternatively, third Thursdays for the alliteration. Would third Thursdays at 4 p.m. work?
Yeah, Thursdays.
Mhm.
Okay.
We're talking about Thursdays at 4 o'clock. Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that'll work.
And then that next one will be then third Thursday of February.
It can be the 16th.
Do you think you'll have the forms back by then?
It's possible. I mean, all things are possible. Did we want to schedule it for the end of the month? Will you'll be joining us, sir?
Yeah, typically I will join you as needed, usually virtually. It saves the town, a lot of expense from me driving down there. And you always have a virtual option as well to attend. And as we get moving with this, there's also the option that Kelly is amazing with the technology, that we create a folder with all the documents that are already in it, and you can look at them on your own time, so that makes the meeting time very efficient because you've already looked at them. So yeah, my concern is that, let's say that you're very efficient and you send these out tomorrow to all the elected officials, and you give them certainly 3 weeks to get it back. That would get it back to you by the 7th. 4 weeks would be the 14th. 1, 2. And we'd meet on the 16th. You'd only have 2 days. So maybe if you wanted to say they're due 3 weeks from the time you send them out, then you'd have 10 days to get them in a format for the commission, and then the 16th would work.
Distro. And are third Thursdays generally available for you, sir?
They are. I'm like everyone else. Advance notice, and I'll schedule it in. And I also work with the town manager to see whether or not it's necessary. Sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes it's not. So we'll play that by ear. And then I'll certainly work with the chairwoman to see whether or not she needs me there, or whether what the agenda will be.
Okay, so we're still shooting for February 16th at 4 p.m.
February 16th at 4.
And the agenda will primarily be reviewing the financial disclosure forms.
You say February 16th?
February 16th.
It's a Thursday.
We good?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Was there anything pop up? Any other questions pop up in the meantime?
Now, you mentioned something about March 16th. No,
Do I have that wrong? Is it March 16th?
any meeting before this, we talked about March 16th. Correct?
Oh, possibly, in an earlier email?
Yes.
Or- Okay, that's all on, no,
Oh, okay.
we'll go with today's. Or did I completely misunderstand that? We were February 16th, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, great. Okay, so then we would be waiting for a motion from our chairwoman to adjourn the meeting.
That's correct.
That we adjourn our meeting here at 4:48 PM.
Any seconds?
Can the alternate second things? I'm assuming I'm not active
I
in
s-
the business side of it, since we have a full quorum here.
I don't see why not. We're all here at the meeting.
All right, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Bye.
Very good.
4:48.
Well, it's nice to meet you all virtually. I look forward to meeting you in person at some point in time as my travels take me to your town. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Likewise.
Okay.
Nice meeting.
Thank you, Jay.
Very
Nice
good. Y'all have a
meeting
good
you.
evening. All right. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Right.
So
Then
you've
you
been
go.
on this ethics
Yes, ma'am.
board for a long time?
Yeah, but matter of fact, I don't think there was an ethics commission before.
Okay.
It was created, I
Okay.
think, in